I'm excited to introduce a guest who needs no introduction, though she is known to some as Chrissy Snow, roommate of Jack and Janet, and tenant of Mr. Roper and Mr. Furley on Three's Company, one of the greatest sitcoms of all time, in my opinion. To others, she's known as Carol Foster Lambert, the matriarch of the Foster and Lambert families that came together on Step by Step. To everyone, she is known as Suzanne Somers, author of 27 books, including 3 #1 New York Times bestsellers. Her most recent book, A New Way to Age, explores a variety of cutting-edge techniques at the forefront of anti-aging. Suzanne, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. Can I make one correction? It's not 3, not
Absolutely.
3 #1 bestsellers, 14 out of 27, but I think this book is going to be number 15. I've been very lucky. Or maybe I've tapped into the collective consciousness with so many of these books.
Wow, 14, that's unbelievable.
Yeah.
My God, we're going to dive into that a little bit later on in the interview. Well, some of the books you've written have been specifically on anti-aging. This book is on anti-aging. You've interviewed leading doctors who specialize in anti-aging. What are some of the most important things that listeners of all ages should understand about how to fight the aging process?
I got cancer 20 years ago, and I remember at the time thinking, wow, what have I done to play host to this disease? And I kept thinking about it, and I realized, I thought I ate right, but I didn't. I was doing television series, and on television sets, they have the craft table with all the it should be called the crap table, because it's all just processed food that has orange powder. And other than turmeric, there's no orange powder in nature, and we weren't eating turmeric. So the cancer thing was I call it a veiled gift. I even, on the first page of this book, I said, you never know where the veiled gift is going to come from. I turned down chemotherapy. I had to listen to Andrew Weil and Larry King, who I adore, talk about me on Larry's show, that Andrew declared that I was most likely not going to live with the choices I've made. And I thought, I have, to me, less chance of living if I do it your way than if I do it my way. So what did I do? I changed the way I ate. I ate only real food, organic food. If you can pick it, pluck it, milk it, or shoot it, I ate it. I eat high fat, high protein, high vegetable diet. That means butter, cream, sour cream, olive oil, full fat cream cheese, but it's all organic, no chemicals. Organic protein. I value sleep now, and I didn't used to. I used to write my books in the middle of the night so no one would bother me. That's a game changer. And I changed my thinking. You can let your thoughts eat you up if somebody ticks you off, and you can let it kind of overtake you. And I tell you, when I was fired from Three's Company, I had some bad thoughts going on in my head, and I had to do the work to undo that and realize that this was probably another veiled gift. And you know what? Being fired, as crappy as it was and as wrong as it was, because I delivered. I just felt that, forget male or female. I was selling the most tickets, so I felt that I deserved to be paid commensurate with other people who were being paid 10 and 15 times more than me that weren't selling as many tickets. So what did I learn out of that? What I learned out of that is the power of reinvention. It didn't happen immediately. But one day I'm sitting there thinking, what did I do this for? Here I was on top of the world, 55 or more magazine covers every year, featured on 60 Minutes, 2020. And there wasn't a show I wasn't on. There wasn't a special I wasn't on. And I thought, there's power in being that famous. And a little voice in my head said, you're holding on to what you don't have. Why don't you focus on what you do have? And I thought, I have enormous visibility. Everybody in this country and most parts of the world know my name. So I said to Alan, my husband, who we're in business together, and truly in business together. We zig and zag together. We get one another. We know one another's strengths, and that's really important. I said, I would like to do a Vegas act. Let's take my name. So he went to Vegas. He went to all the hotels, and they all offered me 2 weeks because that's all they were offering. And he turned them down. He went to Bernie Rothkopf at the MGM Grand, who he describes as looking like somebody's mafia uncle. And he said, I want a 2-year deal for Suzanne Somers, and I don't care what the money is. And Bernie Rothkopf looked up at him and said, why do you want that? Nobody gets the 2-year deal. He said, because I know Suzanne. She just needs the time to really work it out, but she's going to sell tickets because she's a curiosity right now. And he ended up making a deal at the MGM Grand for 2 years at more money than I was asking for on Three's Company. And in 1987, I was named Las Vegas Female Entertainer of the Year, and Frank Sinatra was named Las Vegas Male Entertainer of the Year. And in this process, and then I'll let you ask some questions. I'm so sorry to do this monologue. But when I think about it, I've always reinvented, and I now know the rhythm of careers. When you reach a point where you're about as high as you can get, that's about the time that you turn right or left. Otherwise, you're going to go down. And I've had many incarnations. They've all been successful. But the cancer led to writing all the books, and the books have changed my life and hopefully the lives of over 25 million people who have been exposed to my books around the globe.
That's incredible. And you've actually preempted a lot of the questions that I was going to ask. No, not at all. I think it's great. I think it's better coming from your mouth than coming from mine. But I guess taking a couple of steps back, how did you become Chrissy? How did Three's Company come together? Sometimes
magic happens. In 1973, three amazing things happened. I got my first book of poetry published. Don't even know how. I was an absolute unknown. I would say model, but I would put model with a small m. I mainly did extra work in movies, and because I had a baby and no husband, and you do what you have to do. And I fell in love with Alan Hamill, who lived in Los Angeles, and I would do anything to be with him. And I read in the trade that the Dom DeLuise show was looking for a guest star described as small town girl, doesn't know who she is, and doesn't know what she looks like. And I was smart enough to know that's me. And so I didn't know, I didn't know how it worked. I didn't know you need an agent and all that. And it was Burbank, NBC Studios, 2:00. So I said to Alan, I have an interview Tuesday at 2:00 at Burbank. He said, good, I'll pick you up at the airport, which is all I wanted. And we go over to Burbank. And when you don't know anything, you don't know anything. Why are you here? I'm here for the Dom DeLuise show. Oh, go over there and park over there. So I go in, and there are a bunch of girls sitting there, much better looking than me. And I kind of watch what they're doing. They sign in with the receptionist, and then she gives them a script. So I signed in with the receptionist. She gave me a script. I was called in to read by a guy by the name of Sam Denoff and his partner, Bill Persky, who I eventually ended up working for and with two of the greatest comedy writers in television sitcom history. So I finished reading for Sam Denoff, and he goes, very nice. And I thought, I know. I'm exactly what you're looking for. I'm a small town girl. I don't know who I am, but I don't know what I look like. He said, I'm going to give you a call back. I went, well, thank you. So I go out to the receptionist and I said, I have a call back. She said, well, good for you. I said, what is that? And she said, they're going to call you back. I said, when? She said, I don't know. I said, like today? Yeah. Well, where do I go? Where do I go? And now I'm her problem, and she's annoyed. She goes, and these are the words that changed my life. I don't know. Why don't you go wait in the commissary? So I go over to the commissary, and it's around 3:00 in the afternoon. I'm sitting there by myself, and I didn't buy anything because I didn't have any money. And I'm just sitting there, and in walks Johnny Carson. And I thought to myself, oh, my God, there's Johnny Carson. Oh, my God, there's Johnny Carson. Oh, my God, Johnny Carson's walking over to me. He walks right up to me. He goes, hey, little lady, what are you doing here? And I said, I have a callback, because now I had some lingo, right? And I told him about Dom DeLuise. Dom's a good friend of mine. I hope you get it. And I didn't even have an 8x10. All I had was my little book of poetry. So I just shoved the book into his hands and said, thanks a lot. That was Wednesday. And on Friday night of that week, I made my national television debut on The Tonight Show. And I had to write a bad check for a dress because I didn't own a dress. The dress was $75, and fiddly dee, I'll figure out how to make that right. And I thought, oh my God, they must love my poetry. But what I didn't even think about was I had one credit. And on the back, I had one credit that I put on my book, back cover, that said that she was the mysterious blonde in the Thunderbird in American Graffiti. And I'm now waiting behind that famous curtain, hoping I don't throw up. And I hear Johnny Carson say, well, we've all been wondering who the mysterious blonde in the Thunderbird in American Graffiti is. Well, we found her, because I didn't actually get a credit on the movie. It was so insignificant. And I walked out and the audience went, woo! And I sat down next to Johnny, and he loved me because I was so unpolished. He said, well, when did you get to town? And I said, today. Everything was literal. So because he liked me, he started having me on every month. And my little book of poetry became the #1 best-selling book of poetry in America, along with another poet, Rod McEwen. And on one, or maybe many or all, I don't know, of those appearances, Fred Silverman of ABC, who was president of ABC, they're looking for a girl for Three's Company. They had hired 2, and they didn't test well. And Fred, as he later told me, he said, I'm sitting in the meeting, he said, I got the girl. I see her on the Tonight Show all the time. And that's how I ended up on Three's Company as Chrissy Snow.
At what point did you realize the show was going to be such a success? And what was it like working with John Ritter and Don Knotts and just being a part of something that has been such a special part of TV history?
Well, it was clear from day one, looking at John Ritter, you're working with a major, major talent. And because I had no training, I was too open with the cast by saying I've not studied acting. I mean, my acting experience was getting the lead in the high school musical called Guys and Dolls, and I was Adelaide. But I was really good as Adelaide. And I don't know how this happened either. Serendipity again. A guy by the name of Walter Winchell. I bet you've never heard of him, right? No. Walter Winchell in the 40s was the first guy to have a major national radio show, and it always started out with a ticker tape kind of sound, and this is Walter Winchell, and he had this specific sound, and he wore a trench coat and a pork pie hat. But he was one of the characters that Damon Runyon, who wrote Guys and Dolls, fashioned one of the characters after Walter Winchell. And I don't know how Walter Winchell heard about this high school musical. But on closing night, he came. He's from New York, and I'm in the West Coast. He walks on the stage at the end of the show, walks right up to me, and he says, you're going someplace, sister. So because of that, I got a scholarship to college, but I got pregnant the first time I ever had sex in the first month I was in college, so I didn't get to finish anything. And I just was into this scrambling thing of trying to make a living. When I walked onto the set of Three's Company, I told them that story, which I thought would endear me to them. It made them all mad at me because, like, well, we're all pros here. This is not where you come to learn. But I decided to watch John Ritter. I couldn't take my eyes off of him. He was so great. Don didn't come on to the show for a couple more years. He came on after the Roper spun off. And then there was another guy. The producers were Nichols, Ross, and West. Mickey Ross took me under his wing, the way Nadia Comaneci's coach in the Olympics took her. You know, Nadia would do a flip and a turn, and she'd look to her coach, and he'd give her a thumbs up or a thumbs down.
Sure.
And that's how I worked with Mickey Ross. He worked with me on every scene, and he taught me the rhythm of comedy. And it didn't take me long. The first year I was a little rough, but by year 2, you see there's a whole transition. And I was okay the first year because I looked right. I had that naive small town girl, doesn't know who she is, doesn't know what she looks like kind of a look. But what I didn't realize was happening was Mickey Ross was falling in love with me. Never came on to me. But in the way a father desires his daughter but knows it's wrong, so he became possessive of me. This turned out to be what brought me down. When we hit year 6, and the show was #1, and John Ritter was the star, or was Chrissy Snow the star, or was it the combination of the two? They sure were popular. I couldn't take off any weekends. I was always shooting magazine covers and specials. So when it was time to renegotiate, not only did ABC have an agenda, but Mickey Ross had an agenda, because I had told him, you know, a year before, I'm in love with Alan Hamel, I'm marrying Alan Hamel, and he got furious. Why are you doing that? He's so wrong for you. That's going to ruin your career. What makes your career work is that you're not married. This is awful. And he's so jealous. And every time Alan would come around, he'd be just obnoxious. So when Alan walked into this meeting with ABC already having decided they were going to fire me, guess who he had to negotiate with? Mickey Ross. So Mickey Ross is sitting in the chair opposite him, and Alan says, Suzanne's been on over 150 magazine covers, and she's had her own television specials, and she's this and she's that, and the highest demographics of any woman in television, blah, 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 blah. So she would like you to pay what they are paying the men. And in most cases, it was 10 and 15 times more than I was being paid. Mickey Ross, as Alan describes it, was sitting there smoking a cigarette like a joint, puffing away like angrily. He takes the cigarette, throws it on the floor of the lawyer's office, stomps it out on the floor, stands up, leans over Alan Hamel, nose to nose, and says, "You want me to share my blood with her?" And Alan said, yes. And that's when everyone said, "She's out. Get out." So, 2 hours later.
How did you bounce back from that experience? It must have been something that, obviously all of us go through personal difficulties and professional difficulties, and we fail each day, big and small. But this was obviously something that was devastating for you personally and professionally, yet you were able to bounce back in a way that made you more successful than ever. How did you do it? And really, what's your roadmap for listeners on how to overcome failure and overcome big obstacles and take that next step and become even better because of the setbacks they've had before?
You got to take the time to grieve. Don't take too long. Get up. Don't stay on that pity pot too long. For me, it was the realization that everybody knew my name, and that was powerful. That was more powerful than being, Joe Schmo from nowhere. I was Suzanne Somers. Wherever I went, people knew Suzanne Somers. All I ever heard was, "I missed you on that show. You were so great on that show." And I was also fighting their publicity machine. They had a much bigger machine than me, and they're putting out that she's greedy and she's trying to ruin the show, and she's too big for her britches, and stuff that's hard to get past with the public. So I had to reinvent, and that's when I went to Vegas. And I didn't know that I understood how to work an audience, and I didn't know that I knew that. And I did that by being absolutely honest. It's like I'm a small town girl, don't know who I am, don't know what I look like. I made fun of myself on stage. I morphed into Chrissy and would sing and dance like her. I gave them what they wanted. I talked to them, not at them, but to them. And I had major success in Vegas for a long time, all through the 80s. And the only reason I left Vegas was that I got called back to TV when things had calmed down to do step by step. In my new book, A New Way to Age, my first page says, you never know where the veiled gift is going to come from. Cancer was a veiled gift. That's how I changed my life, changed my diet, I took power of my body. I'm not going to let you fill me up with chemicals. I'm not saying that it's working so well when I look around. If chemical poisoning was so effective, everybody who got cancer would say, "Oh, no big deal. I'll just take some chemicals and I'll be okay." We know that's not true. So, but I had to buck it. Hard to buck it. I think having a partner who gets me, believes in me, doesn't fight me on these things, has been a huge advantage for me. And my husband was as famous as Johnny Carson in Canada. He had their late night talk show. I just did an interview for a Canadian magazine. They all loved Alan Hamel up there. When I was fired, you know what he did? He walked away from being the Johnny Carson of Canada. And I said, "Don't, you'll miss it. You'll miss." He says, No, I've been doing this so long. I've talked to everyone I'm going to talk to. He said, "You have a real shot." He said, you can really be a force, but you're going to give it away because you're so nice. You're going to say yes to everybody. And so he took over my career, and he knew my strengths. He knew my weaknesses. He is a visionary. He saw years down the line. Like the night I opened in Vegas, I had I'm making up numbers right now, but they're in the ballpark. Let's say 10 dancers in a 36-piece orchestra and 8 or 9 costume changes. It was a huge success because it was such an extravaganza. And Chrissy was singing and dancing and tap dancing, and everybody just loved seeing Chrissy sing and dance and tap dance. It was so fun. But when we're walking to our room that night, he said, I see a day when you're not going to have any of that. He said, you're just going to talk. And I went, are you crazy? 2 years ago, I had a residency at the Westgate Hotel in Las Vegas, which was the Las Vegas Hilton. And I had my own room, and God, I was loving it so much. And I only had a 7-piece band. I did change my clothes a few times because I am a girl. But I sang. I mainly talked. I'd lie on the piano and talk. And we were sold out every night. People just loved it. Best reviews of my entire career. People respond to authenticity and honesty. If you don't phony it up, it's mesmerizing. And I believe that there are more big fish awaiting me, you, all of us. It's really not the problems in your life that define you. It's how you respond to the problems in your life that define who you are as a person. I refuse to be a victim. I had a terrible childhood. I've written 3 books about it, for which I'm glad. I learned everything having to hide in that closet at night. I learned everything from the violence in my childhood home. You know what I got from my childhood home? I got a case of what I called the all show yous. My father used to say, you're stupid and you're hopeless and you're worthless and you're nothing and you're a big O. And I remember in my little head, I think, I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you. And I did. And I also forgave him. He had a terrible disease. I wrote, the book that I wrote to him was, it wasn't fun. It was frankly terrible. But what a gift you gave me. And I've used that throughout my life. Don't be a victim. Anybody listening? If you choose to be a victim in any situation, they who have victimized you win. You've got to win by forgiving. And forgiveness is a gift you give yourself. So that's how you handle the crap in life.
That's tremendous advice, and thank you for sharing such a personal anecdote. In our remaining time, I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions. So let's roll. Along the lines of what you were discussing with the way your husband, Alan, has impacted your business and the success over the course of your career, how can spouses and family members and friends who work closely together keep their personal and professional relationships strong?
Yeah, you have to. It's real easy to get mad at the person closest to you. And it's also unbelievably destructive. You've got to put on your big boy pants or big girl pants and really try to see it from their perspective. You don't always have to be right. And the more you do that, the more you respect one another and the more you back off and go, you're right. You were right last time, you're right this time. Next time, maybe I'm right. You can ruin a business relationship by working with a relative, or it can be the greatest experience ever. That's what I'm experiencing. And then don't get stuck. I did home shopping and the shopping channels for 25 years, really successful, a huge, huge business. But we're doing something different now. We've got our whole machinery in place. We've got our fulfillment and warehouse and, everything gets shipped out and everything, but I'm selling from home now. I do 2 Facebook Live shows every week on SuzanneSomers.com. And like yesterday, I did a gut health show. We have everybody's got something wrong with their gut. Everybody, the people listening right now, everybody's shaking their head. I can feel it. Because we're under the great, everybody's constipated or bloated or gaining weight and they don't know why. And they're trying to not eat this and trying to not eat that. Maybe I'm gluten intolerant. Maybe I shouldn't have dairy. So we've come up with this shake for gut health that has loaded. It's like taking 40 different supplements, but you put them in a drink and the drink tastes good. But I didn't do it as a teaching, as a lecture. I understand the gut. I've written so much about the gut. My next book after this one is about the gut. And by teaching, they get mesmerized and telling them the truth and what my gut was doing and why my gut. And look at my stomach. It's flat again now. And so great. You were noticing that I was putting on a little weight. And And so that works. And then like tonight, I'm doing a show from our bar, which we do at least one of our shows from a bar. So we decided to do that for our Facebook Live show. And women don't like to drink alone. We still feel, like it's not ladylike. So I invite them, like tonight, 5 o'clock, come to my bar, let's have a drink together. And tonight I've got a thing called Suzanne Select. Once a month we put out a surprise box because women also love to get a present, even if they pay for it themselves. And the men love to sit in because they like to sit there and imagine they're Al, and Al pours the drinks. And sometimes the friends are over, we have the friends over. And it's allowing my constituency to come into our life as though they are being invited to our house for the drink, and they love it. And they drink a little tequila, and they buy stuff, and they send in comments, and we answer the comments, and it lasts for an hour. And then next week we'll do 2 more, and we do them 2 more. We're making more money than we're making on the shopping channels because we don't have to give them the 61%. And we've got the whole machinery all lined up already. And I look at Alan and I think we moved along with the millennia. We're not stuck in an old form. The thing about the shopping channels now is that young people don't watch television at all. They're listening to podcasts like this. It's all a different way. And if you don't keep up with pop culture, if you don't keep moving on and reinventing, you get stuck and you get forgotten. So we're very viable and it's fun.
Suzanne, I loved you on TV. I was a huge Three's Company fan. I actually watched Step by Step, but I love having you on as a guest because you've literally preempted all the questions I was going to ask with your great wisdom. I was going to ask you, I literally had written down, you were inducted into the Infomercial Hall of Fame, which I don't know how many of our listeners know that. And I was going to ask, what are some of your best sales and marketing tips? And you literally just went into a masterclass on how we can improve our sales and marketing. Is there anything really quickly, because we are running down to our last few minutes, that you would like to add on that topic? And then I'm going to go back into rapid fire mode and ask you a few last questions.
Okay. Turn all negatives into positives. The reason we sold 10 million Thigh Masters is that I bought a pair of shoes in the 80s that cost $565. All they were these plain nude but perfect with toe cleavage and pointy toe and the right height heel. And I'm in my dressing room and I thought, Alan's going to think I'm so stupid paying almost $600 for a pair of totally plain shoes. So I walk out in my new Manolo Blahnik plain shoes and my bra and underpants, and I said, "How do you like my new shoes?" And he said, "Great legs." And I went, "That's a commercial." And if you ever see these original Thigh Master commercial, it's me in those shoes. So I got to write them off. And with Alan off camera saying, "Great legs," the camera pans up my legs. And I go, "Well, I use the Thigh Master."
That's great. What are some of your best tips for aspiring actors and actresses?
It's so hard. Luck is a component. You can be the most talented person in the world, but you got to be in the right place at the right time. I had that luck clearly twice, almost like the universe put me there in a way that I never could have planned on myself. So it's not that you need to study. When I was Chrissy Snow, I just believed that I was her when I was doing her. And Jack and Janet were the parents, and I was the kid. And I tried to be a good girl, and sometimes I wasn't. But I had a moral code of what I would and wouldn't do. And I believed that I was her so much that the audience believed I was her. And when I would put on those clothes and lift up my shoulders and turn my knees in with the 2 ponytails, I was her. And it was delicious. So how do you find, when I was offered dumb blonde, I would have taken the part, but I thought, how do you make a dumb blonde likable? Because they're so annoying. And I think that I turned Chrissy Snow into a lovable dumb blonde. And so if you get the opportunity to get a good character, really think about how can you make that character lovable and likable. Al Pacino once said about his acting, I find the worst thing about the nicest character I play, and I find the nicest thing about the worst character I play, so that the audience has something to root for.
I like that. That's great. I agree completely. A big part of our conversation has been your journey from Suzanne Somers, actress, to Suzanne Somers, thought leader. And you were able to pivot from playing the ultimate ditz on TV to really doing some extraordinary work. I mean, you corrected me when you talked about the number of New York Times bestselling books that you've written, which is incredible. How can listeners learn from your example and avoid getting typecast or pigeonholed?
Oh, that's not an easy answer because when it comes down to it, if you go to law school, you're going to be a lawyer. If you go to med school, you're going to be a doctor. You can study acting your whole life. You may never get one job. So it's a job that requires a belief in yourself and a perseverance. I think you have to really stand back and take an honest look at yourself. And do you have the stuff? And we usually know that inside. I knew I had this stuff. If you just give me an opportunity, I can do it. So believe in yourself. I know that's cliche, but you got to believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, nobody will. And then hope that you find yourself in front of the right person at the right time. But today, in today's world, there's something that's easier, and that is, how can you use social media? How can you create your own show on TV? Look what the Kardashians did. Look what they did. They took a group of good-looking people and turned themselves into these mega success billionaires. So you got to create your reality. I've created this reality on my Facebook Live. We've had shows where we've brought in over 1 million people. It's a phenomenal thing. If only a third of them buy one thing, do the math. Life is good.
I always tell people, you are your brand. Mm-hmm. You create your own personal brand. The school you went to isn't your brand. The job you had isn't your brand. It's really the combination of everything you've done and everything that you want to be. That's your brand. Any final thoughts on how to stay young and live a happy, healthy, and successful life?
Yeah, well, I just wrote 400 pages on it in this book, A New Way to Age. There's a new way to age. I always thought, I'm 73. You can't lie about your age anymore. So I decided around 60 that I was going to sell my age. You can't lie because you can, the moment you say how old you are, people Google you. So I turned my age into my asset. And by keeping myself so healthy and in such, I've been doing yoga every other day for 19 years. You got to exercise. You got to just find one that you like. I replaced all the things that have declined in aging, like hormones and nutrients and minerals, and the fact that we don't absorb nutrients and minerals. And by being in that kind of balance, it makes you have a very strong libido, and that opens up a whole new chapter. And I've got my husband all juiced up on testosterone because men lose their hormones too. So I give him a testosterone shot every Tuesday. Don't call us on Wednesday. And, I say that because a healthy person is a sexual person. What's the last thing you feel like doing when you don't feel well? You don't feel like having sex. So that's why I talk about it. But also I talk about it to let people know, women and men, it ain't over. It's not going to be over for me for a long time. And the earlier you start on making the right choices every day, whether it's the food you choose or the chemicals you do or do not use or put on you or clean your house with or spray your house with, the better your outcome. You want a good endpoint. You don't want to end up in a nursing home like everybody's expecting they are, and start now. And that's what I've done. I see myself for another 3 decades at least, and I'm going to have a strong brain and strong bones. And still going to be sitting at Big Al's bar having a tequila and dancing from time to time.